Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 4 of season 2 of Elevated Office. My name is Eric mcGrew. Of course, I am the owner-operator of Eric's Tree Service in Montrose, Colorado. Also have Elevated Office and my YouTube channel that I run as well. And I'm also doing a podcast for the consumer side, which is called Eric mcGrew the Arborist, and it just talks about things that I find a lot of my clients don't know, have questions about, are unsure about, or just curious about. So if you're into anything like that, or if you're a potential client, not just for Eric's Tree Service, but any tree service, and you want to know a little bit more about why you might want to use a tree service company or something, have an arborist come out and do an evaluation or anything like that, go check that podcast out. It's brand new. It's only got one episode so far, and more are in the can, waiting to be edited and come out. So just know that. Also, I'd like to mention straight off the bat that if you're not checking out Off the Hinge hashtag, go do that. It is heavily related to Gap Arborist Supply in Gap, Pennsylvania. They don't technically sponsor the show, but they do give me a discount for having bought with them and thinking so highly of them. They also supply just really good quality products at a reasonable rate, and they're a smaller company, which I really like, supporting the smaller guys. And on top of that, they have Kyle as their main customer service rep, along with Ray. Ray's the owner. They both have a good knowledge of arborist needs and equipment and technical stuff. Kyle is a climber, and so I can ask him questions, and if he doesn't know, he knows how to find the answer because he has a relative relation with it. And Ray has been able to answer some really important questions about equipment as well. So I find that they've been more helpful to me as a company than just about any other company that I've dealt with. So today on the episode, though, we are going to talk about handsaws. So just to put it into a little bit of perspective, like Silky Zubat, Sugoi. I know that Corona makes one. I know that there are some Japanese samurai saw or something like that. That's one that some guys are using as well. I'm only familiar with some of the cheaper, not so great Fiskar ones, which I hated, and with the Coronas and with the Silkies. So we're not really doing much of a comparison today, but we're doing more of why you might want to use it, how you might want to wear it, something that I found interesting recently, and then two things I found interesting recently, and some pros and cons of different aspects of handsaws and what might help you make a better decision about what you want to do with them. So that's what we'll be getting into today. Let's get started. Okay, so if some of you don't know, technically by ANSI standards now, they are really encouraging that we use handsaws of some sort. It can be most typically either connected to your saddle or connected to your leg. They don't really have a specification, as far as I can tell, even in the revised ANSI, as to what you need to do as far as carrying your handsaw. But they do want you to have a handsaw at all times when you're aloft. And this is interesting because it's not only when you're climbing a tree, but also in the bucket. So what I find is that for me, I don't use a typical man lift bucket like a bucket truck. I usually use a Hewlett, I forgot the model, but it's a 65-foot tow behind bucket with 4 outriggers that come down, and it's a mobile man lift. And it has I want to say it's a 3-foot aluminum tube cage on it, and I strap my handsaw to the side of the bucket when I'm up there instead of keeping it on me. It's not that wearing my handsaw is horrible, but it does because of the way that the safety clip is on the Hewlett that I use. It's actually down at the bottom, close to the floor of the bucket, and the fall restraint harness, the fall restraint deceleration lanyard can get caught between my leg and the handle of my saw a bit, and it's just annoying. So I strap it to the side of the bucket in that situation. That being said, I don't climb with my handsaw on my saddle when I'm climbing. I always climb with it on my leg. I am running the Notch Talon leg mounts, and they're pretty decent. I have had one of the elastic straps that go inside under the elastic, or I should say, the interior rubber straps snap that go under the Velcro stretch leg strap, and I had to fix that. But that's the only problem I've had with them. The foam is really durable. It's holding up well. It's still very comfortable. I've been climbing with it for over a year now. And overall, I just really think that the Notch Talon leg mounts are a good option. And so you can find those at various suppliers. They're not too hard to put on. The way that they're made, the saws definitely fit pretty well. Now, I will say that I think they're a bit more fitted and designed to fit silky saws. I haven't tried like the Coronas or any of the other ones with it, but they do work pretty well. So why do I climb with my handsaw on my leg? Because this is a big debate out in the world of tree service. Well, personally, I climb with my handsaw on my leg for essentially two main reasons, okay? One is simply convenience, because I hate trying to slip my handsaw back down in the scabbard when it's hanging from my saddle and it's kind of flopping around. It almost takes two hands for me to be able to get it in and get it to go in smoothly and clip in like I want it to easily, especially if I'm like hanging in an awkward position and I'm mainly using my chainsaw and I'm just using my handsaw in a one-off situation. I find that it's a bit disconcerting and uncomfortable to have to try to reholster the saw in the scabbard or re-rack it, whatever you want to call it, when it's hanging and flopping around off my saddle. I find it to be a lot more secure and easier when it's on my leg. So I prefer the convenience of using my handsaw on my leg. Also, it's just one less thing on my saddle, so still in the convenience reason. I already carry, I'm a moderately equipment intensive climber. Out of choice, not out of need. I just prefer it. So I'm always climbing with a hand ascender on me with a revolver carabiner, not the revolver rig, but the smaller one, for 3-to-1s, because I only climb SRT as a general rule. It's very, very rare that you'll ever see me get into DDRT or moving rope system. I'm stationary all the way, because I found that I don't need to take that extra time to set up DDRT stuff or MRS or whatever you want to call it. And we can go into that in a future episode. But for me, I climb with my knee ascender, my hand ascender with a revolver carabiner. Sometimes I climb with my Captain Hook, depending on what I'm climbing and what I'm doing. Sometimes I have a sling or two on me with a aluminum rigging ring for certain things that we'll talk about in the future as well. And I usually always carry an extra prusik cord with me or a split toe with me at minimal, because they're great for redirects and they're great in the pinch of an emergency. I've had to use them a couple of times when I dropped a piece of equipment or dropped a piece of my rope runner when I was swapping lines, and so I carry one of those. And I carry a couple of, like 2 or 3 extra carabiners with me for redirects as a general rule. And so I'm kind of equipment intensive, but not super equipment intensive. And therefore, anything less I can have on my saddle is better. So I don't like my scabbard hanging from my saddle. It clangs and it bangs and it flops around all the time, and to me it just is annoying. Whereas on my leg, it's there, it's strapped tight, it works well. I have control of getting the saw out and putting it in easily and consistently, and that's all convenience, right? Now, the second reason I don't like to climb with my handsaw on my saddle is because what I found is that it increased my potential of dropping the saw, and it increased my potential of accidentally cutting my rope bridge or my climbing rope. So here's why I found that. When I tried, so I see guys climbing with their handsaws on their saddle in varying formats. Some, if you've ever seen some of the old westerns, you'd see a guy who had his gun mounted on his gun belt, and the holster was reversed and the handles actually faced forward instead of backwards, and they would kind of like reach and spin, right? Or they would reach across and grab, which wasn't as common, but definitely reach and spin their hand around. And some guys run their handsaws that way. They'll run it with the handle forward, so that when they pull it up, the teeth are basically away from most of your saddle and stuff, and they're not pulling across the rope bridge, which is where, as I mentioned, when you're pulling your saw out of your scabbard like this across your body and the teeth are down, then it's coming very, very close to either your climbing line or your rope bridge very frequently. And I've had it like miss my rope bridge by millimeters before, and I just didn't feel comfortable with that. Never cut my rope bridge, never cut my rope with my handsaw. It just didn't like the proximity effect of that. And when I had the handle turned backwards like a traditional gunfighter and tried to pull the saw up, it just didn't unclip well and pull out. When I turned the handle forward and I tried to pull up, once again it flopped around a little bit and just wasn't comfortable to me. So I guess one nuance that I should mention with this is that depending on the kind of saw you have, it may be more or less difficult to do that, pull it out, because like the Segoys I know and the Zubat have like this roller locking system. The Segoy is a little bit tighter or something. I don't remember, but the Zubat, which I use, has a roller locker and it holds it in, and you kind of have to yank on it to pull it out. And when the tip of the scabbard isn't stable, it can be harder to pop it out and put it back down in there. So I didn't like that, and I definitely didn't like it in proximity to my rope bridge pulling across me like this. Let me see if I can. So I didn't like pulling it across like that, and the teeth being, on the bottom in proximity to my rope bridge and my rope. So I got away from that fairly early on. I like it on my leg. It does have its own pros and cons, and we'll talk about those here in the next segment, just to keep this kind of spread apart.